Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Jank Brews Weekly. My goal with this series is to release a new deck every week on Thursdays with a rotation of the different formats that I personally enjoy playing. And what I consider to be jank is a deck that isn't necessarily top tier. It's not something that anybody will be expecting to see. And a lot of the times these decks will just be for fun. They're not exactly competitive. However, sometimes they might have a chance to actually be in a pretty good position in the meta, depending on what you're going up against and who you're facing, what decks are in your store, basically. Sometimes you might just win out of nowhere because your opponent's not expecting it. Now, before going forward, I would like to preface this by saying that due to budget and time restrictions, I will not have personally tried a lot of the decks that I post, and I would really like to hear from people, their experiences with the decks, any edits they would make, and stuff like that. However, we are going to be starting with one of my favorite decks that I have taken to FNM multiple times, and that is the Infinite Vampire combo for Standard. This is a deck that the original deck idea was not mine. There's actually a link in the description to a video from MTG Goldfish that is where I originally found the deck idea. But it's infinite combo using several parts. It's actually relatively cheap. The deck is at $154 when I made the video. However, the price is quickly dropping as a lot of the more expensive cards in the deck are actually going to be rotating out. Particularly Fatal Push. Now, if you haven't watched the video in the comments, or if you just want a refresher for how the combo works, there's 4 parts to it. The first part of the combo is Oathsworn Vampire. This is just a straightforward 2/2 bear. However, it does have a relevant line of text that says, Oathsworn Vampire may be cast from your graveyard this turn if you gain life. Now, with this in mind, the rest of the combo comes out pretty straightforward. We've got Bontu's Monument, which makes it so that Oathsworn Vampire only costs 1 mana, and whenever you cast a creature spell, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Bontu's Monument is the most essential part to the combo because it is the enabler and it is also the win condition. After that, you have Pitiless Plunder, which makes it so that you get a treasure every time Oathsworn Vampire dies. And you have Sack Outlets, which is how Oathsworn Vampire gets back into your graveyard so you can cast it again. Once you have all of these pieces, by sacrificing Oathsworn Vampire to either Defiance Elevator or Yahenni, you're going to get a treasure, which, since Oathsworn Vampire only costs 1 mana now thanks to Bontu's Monument, you can recast it from the graveyard using the treasure to sacrifice it again to get another treasure, so on and so forth, and drain your opponent out. Now, this is a pretty difficult combo to get together, so in order to do that, we need to have some ways to get all of our pieces. For that, we have 4 copies of Mastermind's Acquisition and 2 copies of Final Parting. Mastermind's Acquisition is just a generic diabolic tutor in all sense, except for it also has another line of text on it that says you may choose a card you own from outside the game, which can go into your sideboard, and that it will become relevant once we get to the sideboard. Besides that, Final Parting is also fantastic in the deck. You can find any piece that you're missing and put an Oathsworn Vampire in your graveyard because that card can always be recast later. However, there's only 2 of them because it's a 5 mana card and it might be too slow normally. Now, in order to survive to the point where we can actually play our combo pieces, we have 4 copies of Gifted Aetherborn. This card is amazing for gumming up the ground, gaining us life, and it can also be a pretty aggressive creature in matchups where you need to get in some damage early. Besides that, we have tons of removal, Fatal Push, Cast Down, and Vraska's Contempt for the creature matchups to make sure that you don't just die before getting to the point of the game where you can make your combo. Besides that, mana base is pretty straightforward. You got 3 Cabal Strongholds. You're going to be running a lot of swamps, so Cabal Stronghold is amazing in this type of deck. Field of Ruin for pesky things like Azcanta, and 19 swamps. Now, going back to Mastermind's Acquisition, the important cards in the sideboard that you can fetch out in Game 1 are Lich's Mastery and Torment of Hailfire. Lich's Mastery is their win condition against control because they usually don't have any creatures in the main deck, and if they don't, then they have no way to make you get rid of Lich's Mastery, and then you can't lose. Excuse me. Torment of Hailfire is an alternate win condition in games that go long. You have a lot of lands, you have a Cabal Stronghold, and you just simply need to close out the game. You can fetch out your Torment of Hailfire and sink all of your mana into there to make your opponent empty their hand and lose all their life. Besides that, the rest of the sideboard is pretty much anti-control because that is our toughest matchup. With a 4-card combo, it is very easy to lose out if you don't have all of your pieces. So 4 Duress and 2 Argyll's Bloodfast in order to keep up with card advantage, make sure your opponent doesn't have the cards they need in their hand. Sorcerer's Spyglass is there to deal with Teferi mostly, although it can also hit some other cards like Azcanta. And Gonti is just fantastic in combo matchups and also control, where you can get one of the key cards your opponent needs and use it yourself. Besides that, the rest of the sideboard is just 2 more copies of Vraska's Contempt and 2 copies of Bontu's Last Reckoning. This is mostly for your big green decks, where Fatal Push might not be enough to deal with a Gigantosaurus. And that's the deck. It's a pretty straightforward deck. Again, the original idea was not mine, but this is my take on the deck. And I just want to say, if you're still watching at this point, I'd like to say thank you for sticking through it, and I do really plan on making this a weekly thing, so be on the lookout for that. And the next format will be Modern. The rotation I plan on doing is first Thursday of the month is going to be Standard, second Thursday will be Modern, third Thursday will be Brawl, actually, for Standard rotation, and the last one will be Commander. If there happens to be a 5th Thursday of the month, I will pretend like it doesn't exist because they're evil. And besides that, once again, thank you for sticking through to this point, and I hope to see you in the future.